Hello everyone, it's the Batman Statue Collector, and on today's featured artist, I can't believe we were able to get this interview. I am so excited to be featuring the amazing David Giraud today, an amazing sculptor. I'd like you to meet him right now.
Hi, my name is David Giraud, or you can pronounce David Giraud if you prefer. I am this month's feature collector, and I am not really a huge collector. I'm mostly uh, an art director, an artist, sculptor, a concept artist, and I've been in the professional world in terms of art for the past 20 years. So mostly video games for most of my career. Games like the first Splinter Cell, Assassin's Creed, Prince of Persia, Sins of Time. Um, Also things like Hitman, Blood Money, that was in Denmark. I mostly work. Well, now I work. I've been in Quebec, Canada, for the past 26 years. But I'm originally from France, and I moved here when I was about 15, close to 16. So, on the question on what and who inspired me to become an artist, I really, I mean, there's a multiple infinite source of inspiration. Uh, but things as a kid that you read, stories that you've been told, um, comic books. I mean, American comic books were a big part. When I was very young, my cousin just gave me just a big box of comics from the 70s, even end of 60s to 70s, and I was reading through that. The Being European, of course, having access to the comic book scene in Europe, bande dessinée, which is Belgium, France, mostly, I guess. So like a lot of stuff coming from those comic books. And very early on, Japanese animation was a big part of our life in France. We had at least 3 days during the week that we had like a whole lot of shows, stuff like Dragon Ball Z, and well, in Europe, Senseiya, which is pretty popular, which is never aired in the U.S. Um, uh, just a whole lot of stuff like popular culture, and also stuff like, for example, I was really interested in history and armors, medieval armors, also things like uh, the Roman Empire. I thought it was a whole lot of interesting designs. uh, Greek Empire, just a lot of stuff with armors and uniforms. I just thought it was just really interesting. So even going to museums and just watching sculptures and painting, like I was lucky enough to have access to this. Like when I was in France, we have museum here in Canada, but it's not as probably not as much, and I'm probably not as interested as I used to be. Maybe lack of time. I should probably do more of that with my kids. So I started to learn, of course, by myself, like most people do. Eventually, I went to a specialized school for 3D in Montreal, Canada, and it was around 96, 97. So it was pretty early on, and there was just a few movies that was CG. I mean, the biggest movies, I guess, at the time were Jurassic Park, and of course there was just Toy Story that just got released not that long ago. That in 97, 96, 97. So like I remember one thing that my dad told me at one point, like a long time ago. Before that time was probably uh, end of the 80s, and he was using computers, and he had one of the first PCs at the time, and he told me to just basically try to go into technology. I mean, being an artist, but on computer. I mean, back then it was almost unheard of, but for some reason it stuck with me, and I didn't have access to computers back then. Well, except like the ones from my dad, which didn't have much except probably Microsoft Paint, things like that. There was no 3D programs, not that I had access to. Uh, so I ended up having a computer only when I started school around 96, 97. I was able to get a student loan. And so my first computer was, well, I guess powerful at the time, but now today it's just laughable. And programs like the first programs that I used were not even 3ds Max or Maya or 3ds Max existed, or it was 3D Studio, I think it was called, or I don't exactly remember like the names of the software. But I used like softwares that were just not as well known. But aside from going to school, I was always interested. I mean, I was always drawing things that interested me, and sculpting as well to some degree. It could have been clay. It was I didn't have access to all the materials that we have today, or I was not just aware of the kind of material that was available at the time. It could have been clay, or just Play-Doh, for example. Anything that just can put my hands on. It's not really about the medium. I think it's more about just doing it and just having fun with it. That was just the whole goal. It's just like a game. When you're a kid, when you draw, it's just to have fun, basically. It's going to be reflective, and I mean, you can see directly on my website. So it's my name, David Giraud, which is what you see here. So if you go .com, it's basically rerouting to ArtStation. And so this is the Trigon statue that I was talking about. That's very dynamic. So I mean, if you look on your own screen, I mean, we're looking at a screen on the tablet. So of course not great, but then you can see it's probably one of the most not complex but challenging one. One that I really enjoyed doing was the Darth Maul for XM Studios. So all was done by me except for the speeder that was actually done by my friend that also did the weapons on my first statue from Sideshow, the Snake Eyes versus Red Ninja. So is a really big Star Wars fan, and he did like an awesome job on the speeder. So once again, like XM has been asking me to do a lot of those effects that I never did before. So like there was the Quicksilver, this one, and there was a whole lot of retakes on the effects. And at some point it was like twirly smoke. There was a whole lot of different, not concept but approach. One of the things I love to do is basically doing concepts, but I do that directly in 3D. So I do a blocking, and I had the chance to work with Serge Biro, which is a really great artist. He's mostly known for his pinups, but he does some amazing art direction, and we've just had a whole lot of fun to do those characters. More of a futuristic heavy type of character. But I mean, you can probably see that better directly on the site. You can see my big hands. They're not that big, but in perspective, it's just big, hairy hands. So I was really happy to work on Street Fighter V with Capcom. That was through Volta, the company I work for. We had 10 of the original models to work with, and we ended up doing also 22 costumes on top of that, alternative costumes. I worked on Zangief, I worked on Rambo Mika, and I worked on Cammy. So that was the Gamora for Sideshow, that was the Batman for Sideshow, Joker that I've shown earlier. That's just personal. I just went to do like a Starfire from the Teen Titan. and my girls just love Starfire, and so I thought I would just do kind of my own take on it. The pose could be a lot more dynamic, and maybe I will revisit eventually and do something more interesting. But so that's the Sideshow, the first piece that I did for Sideshow, the Snake Eyes versus Red Ninja. Different stuff that I did for just concepts for myself, monsters, more realistic studies, I guess. Superhero. Those are kind of older, but some of them are interesting because they're more of my concepts as well. So, like my favorite piece I ever worked on, it's hard to say because there's stuff that I loved on all of them, but I would say probably not because it's the most complex, but there's something about the Dan Boland cover, the Killing Joke cover, that it's so iconic, and having DC asking you to do such an iconic piece of art. I mean, in terms of, I'm talking about the original cover of the Killing Joke, of course. Not, I mean, I'm not. If it's iconic, it's because of that cover, not because of my work. But it was really great to have to try to give that Dan Boland style to the face. Of course, you got some of my style, I guess, but it's something you can't really change. I mean, I think a piece is more powerful in sculpture when you get the essence of the concept, but you also get the style of the artist. So this combined work, and makes it more interesting, I think. If it was just when you're trying to copy something just too much, it ends up being a bit flat or not as interesting as if you put your own twist on it. I mean, of course, it's meant to be really looking very close to the cover, but I think there's a bit of me in there as well. Hopefully, well, it's not something that I can avoid. It's part of me. So this is my workstation. It's a bit dirty, and but can't really see that. So I got myself a fairly powerful desktop. I guess the dual cards, GTX 1080 is mostly for gaming, and so like the main workstation is here with a 4K monitor. And also I got 4K TV connected here, and so that way I can play here, and also sometimes just see something bigger on the screen. It helps. This is Cintiq 22 HD, so I sculpt directly in there, and this is my work computer that was provided by my job. So it's also a Cintiq, but it's a computer. It's not just a screen, so that I can actually sculpt on the go when I need to. But this is most of the time I sculpt on this computer, and usually I don't put my the statues here, but since I use them for the interview, they are here. And I don't have that much statues in my office, and because it's my living room basically, but you get Joker and a few things, and the rest is kind of a bit of a mess, and driving seat and a wheel. So it's basically my living room, because of the fact that my office was downstairs and I was not getting much sunlight, and since I spend all my hours and days working here, I wanted to have a little bit of a light. And sometimes when I do some traditional sculpting in Chevent, I usually do it downstairs in my old office, but right now there's no setup. It's all used for the kids' playroom. So I guess that's not that interesting, but one interesting thing is that I guess the screens are on Ergotron arms, so they can tilt. I can put them really close to me when I need to sculpt. that one also is on the Ergotron arm, so you can basically see that they can be put into different positions. And one interesting feature as well is the IKEA desk that you can basically adapt. So I can actually work standing up. So I can't see right now, but so I can totally stand up and work. Sometimes it's kind of nice just to be able to change. That way, when my back hurts, I can just basically.
All right, guys, with that said, I hope you enjoyed this interview today. I would personally like to thank David again for doing this amazing interview. I am so excited to have him on the channel. And again, just amazing artist and just does amazing work for the statue community. As always, I thank you guys so very much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I'll see you in the Batcave.